Joining us here now from The Athletic on the outset of a very big weekend in the NBA is Sam Amick back here on the program. How you doing, Sam?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me, Rich.
You bet. Absolutely. What happened in the meeting with Blazers general manager Joe Cronin, Damian Lillard, and his agent Aaron Goodwin, best you can tell, that led to a 3-sentence statement from the general manager 48 hours ago? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, best I can tell, it was more of the same, to be honest with you. I think it was Damian's way of, reminding the organization, reminding Joe, like he had said publicly in the weeks heading into the draft, that he's looking for elite, high-level veteran talent to play with as opposed to youngsters. Now, the nuance there is that there's not any acrimony on Damian's part toward – like he's excited about Scoot Henderson, he's excited about the other two guys they got as well to a degree, but it's just that's not the equation that will kind of compel him to stop thinking about a possible trade request. So that meeting to me, it's an interesting one because what jumped out at me is that Cronin's statement says we remain committed to building a winner around Damian, and I thought was, to me it was interesting because he didn't say title contender, it said winner, and they've had winners there for a long time, winning teams. So it is still a to be determined situation where I think once we get into early July, it's going to be on Damian again to decide what he wants to do here.
So the question I have for you here, Sam, and if you can help us with this, so many folks cannot compute in this day and age, this 21st century NBA, where players of Damian Lillard's stature, when they want out, they'll just flat out say it. They'll make a statement. They'll put it on Twitter. Right. They'll have somebody like yourself maybe even report it. But why is Damian like threatening to get to that point? Why is he tick this way? Best you can tell, Sam.
To me, I think he's trying to kind of exercise his influence and his power on the franchise, and to be honest, it's a little bit LeBron-esque, probably not as passive aggressive, but like the thing LeBron has done for eons of, he doesn't need to come out and say, I'm not in love with this roster. He has other ways to get that message across, and then to make it clear to the powers that be that if you don't, do some of the stuff that I want, then we probably have a problem. I think that's why he does it. And he, Damian tries to walk that line, it seems like anyway, because he has so much love for the fan base in the city, and that stuff is very, very real. Mm-hmm. And also, let's not forget, not to go too macro, but, when they had, kind of the ill-fated exit of Neil O'Shea, their previous GM, and Joe Cronin was elevated during that controversy a couple of years ago, Joe was a guy that Damian kind of endorsed and that, seemed to rock with and feel like, this would be a better pathway forward than it was headed towards with Neil. And so to a degree, he's built at least parts of this environment, this ecosystem. And I think to your question about why he's handling it the way he is, I think he's holding out hope that they swing a trade that makes it easier for him to say, you know what, I'm fine. Let's stay here in Portland.
So, heart of hearts, and I do believe you've done some reporting on this, Sam Amick of The Athletic here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is the scenario by which Lillard is sitting back going, attaboy, Joe Cronin, I'm here. You got me. This is it. Well done. You executed the vision that I knew you could. Give me that scenario that's in his brain right now.
Well, the three that I wrote on this week that was definitely, like you said, from reporting, the three players were Draymond Green, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. So the first one, the idea of, and Jeremy Grant would be the fourth because he's on that roster for now, but in a couple days he's not. And it's very important for them to re-sign Jeremy. Now they have his bird rights, so they can cut that check and hold on to him. But the first scenario was Jeremy comes back, and they somehow find a way to swing what would likely have to be a sign and trade for Draymond. Well, a couple of problems with that. All indications are that Draymond wants to stay with the Warriors. All indications are that he's going to stay with the Warriors. So I don't see that one happening. But to your question, that is one where he would say, all right, I'm good. The Raptors guys are in that same vein. But again, the obstacle is Masai Ujiri, who runs the Raptors. He has been testing the market on guys like OG and Siakam for literally almost 2 years now, but he has not shown, he's been very, very patient, very stubborn in trade talks with everybody. So I have no reason to think they can pull either of those scenarios off. So that to me is where, whenever I get asked right now this week about where I think it's headed, I think it's at least headed toward Damian having to decide. It's almost like, is he going to call his own bluff or is he going to, just kind of back off? But Dame's going to have to decide, because I do not think the type of move that will make the decision for him is on the horizon here.
So how much time do you think he gave Joe Cronin? I know you mentioned early July a few minutes ago, but even early July, there might be some moves made by other teams that could take away assets that the Blazers would accept, or for Lillard, or maneuvers that would obviously teams would move heaven and earth to get Damian Lillard if he in fact made it known he wanted out of Portland. But how much time did he give him, do you think?
So I'm trying to make sure my memory's accurate here, and I think it is. So on Friday, I had indicated to somebody who would know the answer to that question that, that my sense was that we would know what direction this was going to go in a matter of 2 weeks. So that's on Friday. It's now obviously been a week since then. I said 2 weeks and got pushback saying, no, it'll be sooner. So
wow.
To me, yeah. And that's, again, stuff is fluid. Who knows how Damian wakes up every morning feeling. But at that time, the indication was that essentially, like by July, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, that you're either going to see a bunch of Blazers action that looks exciting and makes him feel like, all right, this is what I was talking about, whether trade or somehow free agency-wise, even though they're restricted on the cap side of things. But I do think it's coming to a head. But to me, again, keep pounding this point, like the unique part is do I think there's a scenario where Dame tries to push this thing and then still doesn't have it in him to actually make the request? Like, of course, I don't know what percentage odds I give it, but I do think that scenario is still on the table too.
All right, so which teams are sitting there, knife and fork in hand and napkin tucked into their shirt, ready for the news? What do you got for me on that front?
It's the usual suspects. Miami and Brooklyn mainly, but, like in this column I wrote on Monday, it was a deliberate choice to not include Brooklyn, because to me, it's Brooklyn is there, not saying, never say never, but it's like Brooklyn is probably largely there for just the sake of like it's leverage or just call it a negotiation. The Blazers don't want to be backed into a corner, but I do think in terms of what Damian would like, if he did choose to raise his hand and say, I'm done with the Portland chapter, I think it's, Miami is out ahead by a long shot. Now, that being said, friend and colleague Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, had written today that the Blazers are very lukewarm on the prospect of taking Tyler Hero back in that kind of a trade. And it's like, yet again, that's all these obstacles all over the place, because that is it's pretty hard to envision a Heat deal that makes Damian and the Heat happy that does not involve Tyler coming back to Portland.
Sam Amick, the Athletic senior NBA writer here on the Rich Eisen Show. So Harden and Kyrie are the other big fish here, or are we missing anybody right now going into this weekend?
Well, Chris Middleton's an interesting one because, A, he didn't play up to his standards last season, and then B, you kind of assume he's going back to the Bucks. It's just a matter of what number. But Middleton's a big name. But yeah, those two guys, James, and is it going to be Philly? Is it going to be Houston? It's funny though, maybe I have recency bias, but I feel like this particular free agency period, a lot of the reporting all over the place is kind of unofficially already, indicating where guys are going to go. Like right now, there's a lot of loud noise about James being back in Philly, about Kyrie staying in Dallas. You've got the not as many star player names, but the Houston stuff is to me very interesting. A boatload of money and guys like, Fred VanVleet is on that free agency short list, and he very well might wind up in a Rockets jersey. Dylan Brooks has just kind of created his own lane in NBA culture, if you will, and Dylan has been tied to the Rockets. So, this is not the most star-studded free agency crop, but there's a lot of names out there.
Sure, I hear you, and I'm just wondering if the Nuggets winning it all, and obviously you got to have a unicorn like Jokic, and then somebody like Murray perform as well as he's performed coming back from surgery. But the fact that they were a team, right? That they were a team built.
Right.
Is that a copycat situation? Because I understand the Suns just went ahead and did the whole super team move with Bradley Beal, but I'm wondering if we're seeing a changing of the way that front offices look at things because of what the Nuggets have just done. Sam,
I think, Rich, you're going to have a mixed bag on that front. Mm-hmm. Like when the Suns move happened, one of my immediate takeaways, like a lot of people, was like, man, like nobody learned from the Nuggets. Like, what are we doing here? This is the same old kind of recreate the Heat Big Three type of approach. But I for sure think the Nuggets blueprint is going to have an impact. And on top of that, the new CBA is, far more, Nuggets-esque, if that makes sense, than it is the Phoenix approach, meaning that it is so punitive to get into the luxury tax that you simply, like the idea of, having 3 stars on $30+ million contracts is extremely untenable. And these days, when you have the numbers being even higher, like we've been talking about Dame, at the end of Dame's contract, he's going to make $63 million. Mm-hmm. And so these kinds of numbers, when you're talking about, a cap that is, in the low 100s, are not tenable. So, yeah, the Nuggets takeaways are, find a core, hopefully through the draft, and then build around them with economical contracts. And, they're going to try to hold on to Bruce Brown in this offseason. I think surprisingly they might be able to. But depth matters, continuity matters, chemistry matters. And that's why, like, going into next year, who knows, the Suns could be the odds makers' favorite for the title. And for me, and kind of my 2 cents, I certainly would not agree with that. And we saw last year how much continuity mattered, and that part plays a big part.
Okay, so you would not agree with the Nuggets being the odds-on favorite, is what you're saying?
No, I'm sorry. I'm saying the Suns. I'm saying if Vegas liked the Suns, that's what I would disagree with. That, having just covered the finals and having just seen, even beyond the Nuggets, Rich, you're talking about, the Lakers, for example, to their credit, in a very short time span, they found a way to really kind of click with that new group that they had with, Rui Hachimura and D'Angelo Russell before the playoffs playing well and all those things. They got momentum. And then the West Finals showed you that you run into a buzzsaw that not only has talent that's on par with you, but has years of kind of slow growth and the pain that came with playoff failures. And you saw the contrast. You saw the difference in the vast kind of space between them. So, yeah, the Nuggets approach, and this is why, to me, going into next year, they for sure would be the front runners.
So then give me a team would the Lakers be that team that's following that approach? Because you already heard Rob Pelinka say we're not planning on adding a third, if you will, major star. We just want to keep the core together, which is amazing that the Lakers have a core, right? and want to keep it, which you flash back to 1 year ago, we're watching Russ Westbrook standing in the corner of the gym and just down the street here in El Segundo, California, listening to Darvin Ham talk about how he's going to have to buy into coming off the bench. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild where the Lakers currently are and what appears to be LeBron's last year. I
agree with you more. Yeah, 100%. It's funny because I thought about that this morning. I might write something on the Lakers soon. But, like, I feel like they, and mainly perhaps even LeBron, have lost sight of where they were last summer and early this season and starting 2-10. And so the idea of, re-signing Reeves, re-signing Hachimura, re-signing Russell perhaps, and growing, what they had in the second half of last season does make a lot of sense to me. But it's like, oh, by the way, LeBron has not technically publicly told the world that he's for sure coming back. He is widely expected to be coming back, that he's not retiring. But that whole retirement subplot, I always felt was kind of his way of saying, I'm not sure what I think of this roster. And, you know, I understand that it might not be the number one roster in the NBA, but it's wildly better than it was, like you said, early last season. And I do think it has potential if you give it a little bit of time. You know, he's not at a place in his career where time is on his side, and I get that. But I do for sure think that it's their best option right now, and I think they're probably handling it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have had a camera on LeBron. I don't know who was the one who told him Chris Paul was going to the Warriors. Who was the one who broke that news to him? You know what I mean? Like that'd be an interesting moment in the world.
No question. And I think that is, you know, if you could have given him something like that, that might have calmed the waters. And who knows if they have something else in the cards once free agency hits or trade-wise. But, you know, and I get that. But, again, objectively and non-emotionally, you look at that. And Chris, I actually think, could be good for the Warriors. But, you know, you're talking about a 38-year-old Chris Paul. You know, that's the Lakers have a good thing going. And I think if LeBron gets behind it, I think they're going to have a good year.
All right, Sam, last one for you as we go into this very busy weekend. Give me the off the radar. And I know you don't traffic in rumor, you traffic in facts, but you got something for me that we keep an eye on that could go totally haywire this weekend that we're not thinking about right now?
I mean, this is probably a little more macro than you're looking for, but
okay.
I think it's still compelling. Is I'm just looking at the New Orleans situation. And how do they play it? You know, they were not successful moving up in the draft and try, you know, who knows to what degree they shopped Zion or, you know, and all indications were that Brandon Ingram was actually more untouchable than Zion was. But they just, anytime you have a situation like that where if you think about it, Rich, man, like 2 months into last regular season, this was a team that was on top of the West and was, you know, unofficially getting crowned as like a West contender from henceforth. And next thing you know, the wheels are falling off. The roster is not what you thought it was going to be, mainly because of health. They have since had some turmoil. Their head of training was kind of shown the exits. Teresa Weatherspoon, you know, one of Zion's confidants and an assistant coach, surprisingly was not there anymore. Just a lot of upheaval, and I think a divide between ownership, management, and Zion. And so that always is a recipe for something. I don't know what it leads to, but I don't think that Dave Griff and that Pelicans group are going to want to go into the next season with that same exact group together.
Interesting. What about a smart, targeted veteran that wants to play with Victor Wembanyama and Pop in San Antonio? Not like a game changer, right? But it just seems it would be such a smart Spurs move to find a savvy veteran that wants to join this young team just at the outset of a huge moment for the Spurs. That just sounds like a Spurs move to me, Sam. You know?
It does, and I'm trying to think of who that might be. I mean, you know, one guy, not quite probably the level that you're talking about, but, you know, like I could see a Harrison Barnes out there, except that, you know, again, all signs are that Harrison's probably staying in Sacramento.
Right.
You know, I don't know who that guy is, but I agree. And it's also interesting, like, I think the Spurs, they want to start winning games, and they want Victor to have momentum in the early part of his career, but
right.
I don't think that they are trying to go out and get the kind of game-changing free agent that it takes them completely out of the lottery balls, if you know what I mean.
No, I do.
It's going to be a slow growth. Yeah.
Yeah, but it just strikes me, just go find out one guy who can fill it up and be smart and maybe whisper in the kid's ear a little bit, you know, and get off to a decent start. That's the sort of thing I'm looking at, you know. Never know.
Yes, I agree. Although, man, if they don't find that guy, it doesn't get much better than having guys like Tim Duncan around and Dave Robinson around. And he's not going to be lacking for wisdom in that environment. And I think it's so cool. I mean, he said the other day in one of his interviews, I think this was actually on the J.J. Redick podcast, that if he, and I don't think he's just blowing smoke, he said if you could have told me going in to just pick a team that I wanted to be on, that I would have picked San Antonio.
Yeah,
and I thought
sense.
that was so neat because Yeah, it makes sense, but you know how it is. A lot of times, you know, the young players are just looking at the big cities, and so to hear him say that, no, it was small market San Antonio with all that history, and that he had such an awareness of what they'd accomplished and why that would be a good environment for him. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it helps to have Tony Parker and Boris Diaw sign your checks. You know, you know what I mean? That gives you an idea.
Yes, there is that.
Thanks for the call, Sam. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for the time. Let's talk soon.
You got it. Thanks, Rich.
You bet. Sam Amick must follow at Sam_Amick on Twitter, at SR Amick on Instagram, and, of course, The Athletic for all of Sam's latest. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.